All right, how's everyone doing? I'm Rich CELENZA. Thanks for tuning in to the Rich CELENZA Show. WTF are you talking about? So, what I want to get into today is something I wrote. Actually, it's the last quote in my book, The Wingman, which is a must-have guide to finding the woman of your dreams. Or actually, it's I don't even know my own slogan for that book. It's been so long. What's it called? The must-have guide to finding the woman of your dreams. That's what I think it is. And at the end, I put, the minute you realize you don't need anyone to make you complete is when you are. And I want to go over that today because I have a Mastering Self-Confidence program where I try to help men find the woman or women of their dreams. And this goes for women as well. And I really believe when I was, for the last 10 years of my life, I was traveling alone a lot. I grew up as an only child. And I think sometimes, and I can only speak for myself, I love being an only child, but I thought because my parents were divorced at a young age and nobody else was really, no one I knew except, which is interesting, is my grandmother, not my great-grandmother from Italy, but my mother and my grandmother were both divorced. My grandmother, my mother's mother, had 6 kids. My mother had me. My grandmother had my mother. I talk about this all the time, at 15, and then my mother had me at 18. So most people thought me and my mother were sisters, and my grandmother was my mother, and then my immigrant grandmother from Italy was my grandmother. I grew up with a very obsessed religious, my mother, and my father being a very flamboyant nightclub owner. Couldn't be more opposites. But I think throughout my life, I was always thinking I needed something to be complete. I wasn't raised in a complete environment. I was almost embarrassed then. Now I wouldn't change it for the world. I didn't realize how amazing my life was as a young man. Also having hundreds of cousins. I grew up in an Italian house, mainly all Italians. Very loud, crazy. Some were, I'm not going to lie, they were violent. We have a lot of, in one side of my family member, very rough guys, tough, Napolitans, they're Naples, they're not out to fuck around. Arrests, drugs, murders, everything was, some of my family members even got murdered. It's brutal. And then my other family members on my father's side, very upper middle class, totally different lifestyle. Just unbelievable, even on a wealth end, condos in South Florida, boats, Cadillacs, Lincolns, just a whole summer homes, just different. And I felt like I was kind of both of these people. And then even going from my mother to going to church all the time and Bible studies, and then the next thing you know, I'm in a loud nightclub with rock and roll bands and disco kind of going, and drugs and alcohol. I was always kind of like, what am I missing? Why am I in this position? Why did God even put me in this position? I'm not to get religious. I was like, why out of all my friends, it seems like when they're out, they didn't go out all week. They would be with their family. They'd go out to dinner maybe once a week back then. I'm talking the 70s. They were mainly, my friends were Italian too, so they'd go to Taylor Street, or we went to Melrose Park, Elmwood Park. During the week, we get Italian beefs or sausage or hot dogs back in Chicago or whatever. But they lived a nice, normal household. I'd go to my friend's house. Both parents would be eating dinner at 5 o'clock. And my mom's an amazing cook, but it would just be me and her. So I always kind of felt like, oh, my dad's missing. And then when I'm with my dad, oh, my mom's missing. And I had, back then, my stepfather was, my mother ended up getting married in my teens, like sophomore year in high school, but I had a stepfather. He wasn't my stepfather at the time, but he was around a long time in my life, since like 3rd grade. I loved him. Him and his family treated me unbelievable. Again, all Italians from Italy. Unbelievable. And at that time, my stepfather was dating my stepmother. My father was dating my stepmother, and she had an incredible family, unbelievable. And then it was a broken home too. Actually, from years ago, there was a divorce, so there was like 10 kids or 9 of them. There was like her mom had 3 kids, I think, and then her stepdad had 4, 5 or whatever, or 4, and then they had a kid together. So it was kind of a mine, or ours, yours, his type of, marriage. But, and he ended up going to Missouri, my step-grandfather, and he built half of Branson, Missouri. He's an amazing man, Joe Novak. He is like the ultimate man's man, in my opinion. Builds things, anything. So I was always surrounded by really so much love, but I was kind of always bopping, like I was always by myself, right? I didn't I have my cousins, my 2 cousins that I was around a lot. One of them even come to live with me at a young age. They're like my brothers. But I was still alone, bopping around. On my father's side of the family, my father was actually a mistake. I think his mother had him at about 45 or 42. His dad may have been in his 50s. And then on that side of the family, I'm the baby. And then on my mom's side, I'm the oldest grandson. But there's like 150 cousins. My mother's the oldest out of all of them. Out of all the grandchildren my grandmother had, which is quite interesting. So I went from the youngest to the oldest, or vice versa, whatever. But a lot of times I always felt like, oh my God, something's missing here in my mind. And I think a lot of people go through that as well. Something is missing, and we always need something to kind of make ourselves complete. And it could be a person. I was writing that I wanted 2 daughters at a young age. I have no idea why. I wrote it in my journal in high school. We had to start a journal that, I'm going to have 2 daughters. I don't know why I ended up with 2 daughters, which is quite interesting. And I always wanted a family, I think, where there wasn't divorce involved, because I was surrounded by divorce and nobody else was. And I felt like if you were divorced, you were incomplete back then. But at the same time, I didn't realize how amazing my life was. I just thought everybody that had parents that weren't divorced had amazing lives and wonderful households, because I didn't know any better. I mean, some of my uncles that were married that had a lot of kids that I would be with at times, I knew it was a fiasco because of screaming and yelling and all these different things. Don't get me wrong, but I thought that was normal at the time. I'm like, yeah, that's what families are supposed to be. And the good times. I mean, I'm not saying my aunts and uncles were always screaming. They're just funny Italians. You know how that is. And but I'd go to their house, and they all had siblings. Most of them, all of them had siblings. I think, obviously, with all my cousins, but most of them had 4, 5, 6 Catholic Italians. They all had a lot of kids. Some had 7, some had 8. It was unbelievable. 8 sons my Uncle Raji had. I'd go there. It was like a gymnasium. They'd be playing sports outside. Not only would some be playing sports outside, they'd have friends over. Some were playing ping pong inside. Some are playing fast pitch against it. Like, I had options. When I'm by myself, I only could find a friend locally. But I always kind of, again, felt like I was missing something. And it took me so long, actually, after my divorce, to say, hey, you had it all, or you still have it all. You're not really missing anything. You just always kind of want to have something to maybe look forward to, I think, is what one thing, it's kind of a weird thing, and I think a lot of people fall into that. They're like, and I'm not talking relationship, I'm just saying something's missing. Like, when I was younger, too, I'm like, I grew up in an apartment, and then my grandparents owned like a 3-flat, Chicago style, and I always felt like, wow, I wanted to live in my own home, and if I get a big, beautiful home with a security guard, that would make me fulfilled, and I ended up getting that at a very young age. Hey, if I get a new caddy, or actually started with a Grand National when I was younger, if I get this, I want, that'll fulfill me and make me happy. Hey, if I get the house, hey, if I get a new caddy and a Lincoln at the same time, that'll make me happy. If I go to Vegas all the time and gamble more, even when they're on my honeymoon, that'll fulfill me. If I get married, that'll fulfill me. You start to realize after time, I really was getting everything I wanted, and I was never fulfilled. I was just kind of a jagoff wanting more. I was kind of like always running on empty. I had to realize nothing or no one is really going to make me complete. I have to do that. I have to feel that way, and if I don't feel that way, you have to accept that way. But when it comes to relationships, and I talk about this with people all the time, they feel like they need somebody always in their life to make them complete. And they'll take, I hate to say this, and I say this about a lot of guys, is they like who likes them. If a lot of times they're not willing to take the time out, put themselves in the right place at the right time to meet the right one. They'll find out a woman or a girl likes them, or they'll be here or meet them here just out of a fluke on a cruise, in a bar or whatever. And I'm not saying that doesn't work. God bless you. But a lot of times you settle, right? Because you feel, I think, incomplete. And you think this person's going to fill a void, or they're going to complete me, or what was that Tom Cruise shit, you complete me. I think, what did he say in that movie? Jerry Maguire, you don't need anybody to fucking complete you. And if somebody needs somebody to complete them, they're probably messed up. You need to find somebody who's comfortable in their own skin, has their shit together, and can become a partner with you, and you both move on together. Not where somebody's insecure, and I hate to say this, or somebody's always needing something, and I've dated those type of women, and you might have as well, or if you're a woman, you know these type of men. They're just always in need of something. They're insecure. And even, I don't care if it's mommy issues, daddy issues, whatever the issues are, they've got to get over that shit, or you have to get over it. You do. You've got to realize when you have the confidence that you don't need anyone to be happy, you're going to start being happy. Because what happens a lot of times, you think this person's going to be the one to make you happy. And a lot of times, they don't. At the beginning, they may. Through the honeymoon phase, everything is kind of fun and happy. You're always, when you first start dating, like, wow, you know what? This is probably the one. This is the one that's going to, if I would have found them years ago, if you're older, this would have been the one I should have had kids with. Or, oh my God, this is the one that I've been waiting for my whole life. This is my favorite. Bullshit. Then go see them in 6 months or a year or 2 or 5 years down the road. What happens then? You start to find out a lot about what each other really is. Some is good, some is bad. And I'm not saying that somebody can't fulfill your heart or your love. That's not what I'm saying. What I'm saying is that if you are insecure enough where you constantly need that, is what I should be saying too. So I think sometimes people are like, Rich, you don't believe in love? And you call love a spell and all these things. That's not true. I love love and all that stuff. God is love. My cousin just reminded me again at Chester, CELENZA, my cousin. He said, Rich, God, he's talking about love. He says, God is love. And I was like, holy shit, yeah. And if you don't believe in God, I get that as well. And if you don't believe in love, I get that as well too. I could see someone saying love's full of shit. It's kind of like two people coming together that, that whatever it is, it works at the time, and then after it's over, it's kind of funny how a lot of times it turns into hate or disgust or whatever. I always found that quite interesting, that you can love someone, and then when you're not with them or it ends, you hate that person. I don't get that fine line, right? It's so cut and dry. If you truly love somebody, I don't understand how all of a sudden, and I get if they did something horrific to you, no one's perfect. But the truth is, and I go through that myself, I know a lot of people have done a lot of crazy shit to me and stuff. When I love them, it could be my friends, colleagues, cousins, relationships, exes, whatever. I don't hate them. I still have feelings for them, and I always want the best for them, even if they did certain shit to me or others as well. Because I really think people need a second chance. Now, that doesn't mean I have to put up with their bullshit. I'll tell them to get the fuck out of here. I'm not going to, just because, but it doesn't mean I have to go out and talk trash about them or want them to get hurt or, condemn them. I think that's ridiculous, because a lot of people deserve more than that, because a lot of people, as you know, most people have families. So is that type of person has parents, they may have kids, they have siblings. They affect a lot of people's lives, maybe in other ways, good and bad. But, yeah. And I just talked about this on an earlier podcast about being comfortable in your own skin. And I do it a lot, and it's learn to be alone for certain parts of a day, a week, a month, to really figure out, call yourself out on a lot of your insecurities, your beliefs. Just give yourself time to think. And that doesn't mean you're being alone and you're playing, for instance, a podcast, or you're alone blasting the radio, or you're alone on the computer, on social media, hypothetically. That's not what I'm talking about. I'm talking about being outright alone, just sitting in your bed and thinking. It could be before you go to bed, when you wake up, or you go to Starbucks to have a cup of coffee. You just sit there and think. You'd be shocked at what starts coming to your head. Shutting out all the noise. Just saying, hey, how do I feel right now? And I used to be the guy to say, hey, I don't really have any feelings. I could give a shit. Who gives a shit about that? Who gives a shit about who's got time for feelings? Just sit there and start analyzing how you feel. Am I pissed off right now about how my day's going? Am I happy about how the day's going? How am I really doing at my work, at my job? Am I good? Am I bad? Am I being a pain in the ass? Am I doing the best I can? How am I as a father? What's going on with that? My daughter said this to me when I left. What did that mean? Or she texted me this. How did I react? Right? I got an email. Did I overreact? A lot of times I tell people too, we react a lot of times. We just react, right? We get an email, we don't like it, we're like, F you, blah, 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 and we send it, and we're like, you know what the hell was I doing? Actually, and then you talk to that person, he was like, no, I didn't mean it that way, I meant it this way. You just kind of took it the wrong way. It could even be a conversation. If you get in a beef with somebody, say, and first of all, I don't allow anybody to send me negative texts, email, anything. If you do, people know I will not respond. I'll delete it. You want to have a beef with me or you want to talk, you better go face to face. That doesn't mean I don't email work or people can't text me. I'm saying on a negative manner because I don't allow that. But if I do get really nuts, a lot of times I just had to do it again. If I get crazy, I call it huffy puffy. If somebody aggravates me or something's going down that I don't like, I give myself a lot of times 24 hours to really think about how to react to that. And I tell people that all the time and they're like, shut the F up. Maybe even a weekend. Because a lot of times Friday, a lot of people I know are really sometimes aggravated at work and they want to quit. Or they want to just start immediately looking for a new job. Or they want to, whatever it is. I tell people, have patience. Think about it. Spend some time alone. Think about it. Monday comes around, then send your email or then see how you feel. And most of the time, you feel so much different. Maybe worse, sometimes better. But at least you gave your brain and your body and your mind time to really think about what was the right move. Because a lot of things are just very reactive in our life. And I think we're kind of programmed that way. And with all the, I guess you could say, social media again, and the way we're being cluttered with all this noise, and people have access to us at all the time. Like you have somebody who could text you right now and say "F you," or "Did you do this?" or blame you for something, or all that. Where years ago you didn't have that. You had to wait to see that person, or they had to call you on the phone, right? That's how they had to do it. Most people didn't have the balls to call you, and they didn't have the balls to say it to your face. So a lot of it was bullshit. Same with email, same with Messenger, all these different type of things, right? So back to feelings and really how you feel about yourself and being complete. And the only one who, like I said before, is going to do that is you. Stay focused on that. Because again, if you really can't figure out what's going to fill these voids in your life, you're going to always have empty voids. And I think what happens too is when we have these empty voids, you start using, could be alcohol, drug, or other things to fill those voids. Now, there's nothing wrong, I think. If you do recreational drugs, I don't even know what the fuck that really means, but you do it. God bless you. You can have a drink or two. It's when you do things excessively, and I think we do that because we feel better maybe when we're doing those things than when you're just not doing those things, I guess you could say. And again, you may think you need all these possessions or you need someone to fill that void, a certain type of person. It may even be somewhere where you always wanted to live, you never got to. Whatever that is, you have to confront that and you have to go after that. If you don't, if you really, what I saw a saying yesterday, if you can never make anyone happy unless you're happy. It was like that, but it was a lot more strategically said. God, I wish I could. But anyways, quit lying to yourself. And I talk about this all the time on my podcast because, again, you can bullshit everybody in the world. You can't bullshit yourself. But really start realizing nothing is going to make you complete except yourself. If you were to build something that you wanted to build, just you. Now, again, don't get me wrong. You may need help. You may have to hire other employees. You may have to even hire an architect to draw it. If you need a bricklayer, you need a carpenter, whatever, you need these components. Wonderful. But you have to realize you're the only one who's going to really know your own vision. Just like you're the only one who really knows yourself. No one really knows who you are internally. I don't care how much you talk. I don't care what you look like. No one jumps into your brain or your body and lives the life you lead. So a lot of times you'll be like, oh, I know what he likes, or I know what he does, or what he would do in this. And then all of a sudden they do things that shock you all the time, right? It's almost in relationships. All of a sudden your friends, you're like, I thought you guys had the best relationship, and they're getting a divorce. You're like, what the hell? I thought or somebody does something in the workplace, or even somebody does something very violent. All these things, we don't really know anyone. The only one you really know is yourself, right? And you have to be responsible to yourself. If you, again, you only have one body again, you can't escape yourself. Treat yourself better, really, than anyone else. And I don't see that. I see a lot of people beat themselves up more than ever and kind of is worried about what everybody else is thinking or bending over backwards for everyone else. And then they have a lot of issues. They don't either feel good, they may have addictions, they may have relationship issues, all these things, and they almost feel bad if they take care of themselves. You've got to take care of yourself for just your health reasons. And it's not only physical, it's mental. A lot of people think because they're in good shape, physically, everything's going to work itself out. It's not true. A lot of your problems obviously stem mentally. It's not even physically. And it's being able to address yourself and saying, you know what? Why do you keep doing this? That keeps hurting us. Why don't you do this? Why don't you take your time and do this? Why don't you read more and learn more about what you want to learn about? Why don't I watch more videos on what I really want to learn about? Take my time to do that instead of just wasting time on social media or sitting in a bar or just, and I love watching sports, let's not get ridiculous, but spending all day watching or talking about sports or being obsessed at the workplace where all you become is this thing where all you know what to do is talk about work, even at home with your kids or all these different things. Just really, again, start to learn how to take care of yourself and really learn how to make yourself complete. And I don't think anybody is always going to be 100% happy with the things they have or because I think we're all evolving and we want to experience new things. So on the other hand, what I'm also saying is you want to be open-minded enough to evolve, right? And there's a difference between having a void where it kind of makes you crazy and you're doing different, you never fill the void and you're doing everything else but that. And then another situation where you're like, hey, all of a sudden I want to go to Hawaii. That's wonderful. Address it and then go after it. Don't be the type of person to say, hey, I want to go to Hawaii, but if I don't go, I'm going to be miserable. And that's what I mean too when you're saying, to complete yourself. Start heading in the direction of going to Hawaii. It may not be in 3 months, 6 months, a year, maybe 2 years, but figure out a way how to go do that. Because if you don't do it, a lot of times you make yourself and everybody else miserable. So, again, that's much different than saying, like I was saying earlier, the minute you realize, you're complete is when you know you are, basically. That's what you really got to figure out. So take your time, don't beat yourself up, and I'm going to wrap it up there. So thanks for listening to the Rich CELENZA Show. WTF are you talking about? I have a YouTube channel. I always post a lot of different things on there regarding my Mastering Self-Confidence program. I also post things where I travel all over North America and Italy, show different places I go to, and try to give pointers on how to travel affordably. And I have a YouTube page, Rich CELENZA, and a bunch of stuff out there as well if you just Google my name. And thanks for taking a listen. I wish you nothing but the best. Take care.